French President Emmanuel Macron has tested positive for COVID-19. The news coming earlier today in a statement from his office. Bloomberg News reporter Anya Nussbaum has been tracking the latest on this story, and she joins me now from our Paris bureau. Anya, what do we know at this point about Macron's condition, and who else in close proximity to him may now be isolating as a result?
Good morning. The details are scant about Macron's conditions, but an official in his office told me he had only mild symptoms and is going to be able to participate in a working meeting about development aid in France, from France to developing countries, obviously. So he's doing okay, and people around him have been isolating, including his wife. Brigitte Macron is 67 years old, so she could be vulnerable, but so far she hasn't had any symptoms as well, and she's going to get tested. But also the Prime Minister was tested. He's negative, but he will still isolate for another week to be sure before a second test. And also head of political groups at the National Assembly that Macron has seen in the past few days.
Anya, this comes at a time when Paris and greater France is going through a terrible wave of COVID, just like many other parts of the world. What's the latest from the country? What are the restrictions that are in place?
Absolutely. So France has implemented two very strict lockdowns this year. The last lockdown was lifted a couple of days ago, and we are now experiencing a curfew. But Macron's contamination is a good reminder of the risks ahead of us, because the French government is allowing the curfew to lift for the Christmas night, where people traditionally go see their families and potentially elderly people as well. It's also a risk ahead of the December 31st, the New Year's Eve, basically, where people tend to go party. And although the government has said that this year we shouldn't party and we should stay at home, the curfew will be implemented. So yeah, it's a difficult time right now. A lot of people are getting tested ahead of the holidays to be sure they're not going to infect their families, and the risks are apparent.
So here in the United States, this has become very political, and I want you to give us an idea of what things are like in France right now, because you're there and you're experiencing it. I mean, mask wearing is political here, lockdowns are political here. Everything is politically charged when it comes to the virus and the response to the virus. What has been the response from people who are living in France?
It's a good question because from my experience talking to American colleagues, American friends, watching American media, I feel like masks here are way less political than in the US. I think most people, the overall majority of people are complying. They're actually in demand for protection and they're wearing their masks. And of course there is a vocal minority that doesn't want to wear masks, and there are conspiracy theories about where the virus comes from. There was this very popular conspirationist documentary that became viral in France, and all of that. But overall, I think there's an agreement that these measures should be respected. And here, I mean, testing is really quick and free for people who are enrolled with Social Security. So it's very painless to get tested right now. So I think that helps with people complying with the recommendations.
Yeah, nice to have that option for people, I would imagine. I want to know more broadly across the EU where things stand when it comes to vaccinations. We've seen images out of the UK and, of course, here in the United States of early people getting the vaccinations this week and last week in the UK. How does this stand in France and the rest of the EU?
So France ideally would start the vaccination campaign at the end of December, after the EU agency gives its approval to the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine. So the hope is to start at the end of the year for vulnerable people, for health personnel, and then continue on and vaccine as many people as possible by the end of the spring. So this would mean a large vaccination campaign performed by, say, June. But it's really a challenge in terms of logistics, in terms of approval for medicine agencies as well, and a challenge for the EU.
Bloomberg News reporter Ania Nussbaum, thank you so much for your time joining us from our Paris bureau. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.